2, 1. Okay, got it. Thank you, Sandra, and thank you for being such a great host along with Kiko Chad. It's great to have you here for another year of bringing Plantorama. So welcome everyone to the 26th annual Plantorama Part 1. My name is Charles Rigolevich, and I currently serve as director of the School of Professional Horticulture and also as president of Metro Hort Group. It's great to see so many faces, familiar and new. Like everyone, we thought we would be able to meet in person at Brooklyn Botanic Garden, but it's better for all of us to continue to exercise some caution and safety until the pandemic has truly subsided. While our monthly meetings have been virtual, this past summer we held 5 field trips in person and 2 workshops in person. So we will be gradually returning to a pre-pandemic way of life, and I hope that we will be able to return safely to our monthly meetings in person very soon. By fall, I'm sure we will. So we have a great lineup of speakers, 2 as part of tonight's symposium, and 7 as part of tomorrow's breakout sessions, along with several trade show presentations by our corporate sponsors. And speaking of corporate sponsors, as Sandra just mentioned, I'd like to thank them for their participation. They are Atlantic Nurseries, Town and Gardens, Blondie's Treehouse, Emma's Garden, Etain Health, Landcraft Environment, New Moon Nursery, and North Creek Nurseries. So thank you all, sponsors. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with Metro Hort, what began in 1986 as a group of young professionals, plant geeks of their generation, getting together after work over drinks to talk about plants. It soon developed into a full-fledged organization that incorporated in 1988. Over the years, it evolved to what it is today, an association of professionals in the green industry, which includes nearly 500 individual members and over 100 corporate members in the tri-state area. Membership is still only $40 a year for individuals, $125 for corporate. It's a very affordable organization. And has everyone renewed their membership for this year? I hope so. So if you haven't, please do, please do. So what are the benefits of membership? You get to attend monthly meetings for free, webinars, field trips. You get a listing in our online membership directory. Non-members are able to search our corporate membership listing. You're able to search our online membership directory to find members with certain professional skills. You can post and access our jobs listings, which is a free service that Metro Hort provides to the entire community. We have our archives web pages, which you could access. And plus, as we have seen just a few minutes ago, it's a great networking organization to exchange and share ideas and meet new people. Our members represent a wide spectrum of the green industry with a board led by 20 individuals. And we, the board, all serve as volunteers and represent the cross-section of the New York City community. So this past August, we started to plan for Plantorama, and over the following weeks and months, spent countless hours to organize this year's exciting program. I'd like to give a special shout out to Plantorama Committee Chair, Pamela Moulton, and our 2 co-managers, Bob Hyland and Mark Grayson, and to the many board members who spent hours putting together this year's program. So now I'd like to turn it over to Bob Hyland, who is coming to us live from Portland, Oregon, and he will introduce our first speaker. Bob.
Greetings from Portland. It's great to see everybody again at my 26th Plantorama. Who would have thought back in 1997 when Margaret Roach and Bill Shank and I started this that it would still be continuing today. Sorry that it's virtual again, but it's great that we're still here. It's my great pleasure tonight to introduce our first speaker, Jimmy Blake, who is a consummate Irish plantsman and co-author with Noel Kingsbury of and I'm going to hold up the book, A Beautiful Obsession, Jimmy Blake's World of Plants at Huntingbrook Gardens. And you can get this, I just checked Amazon. You can order this through Amazon if you don't have a copy already. I think you can get it from Jimmy directly, or I should say, support your local bookstores. So the book was published in 2019, and it was co-authored with Noel Kingsbury. Tonight, Jimmy's going to take us on a breathtaking journey through the newest and most exciting plants in his collection at Huntingbrook, his lush garden near Dublin, Ireland, and from his travels to other gardens and nurseries across the globe. He's going to share with us and incorporate how he incorporates choice plants into his planting schemes at Hunting Brook. And just an aside, I met Jimmy at a Hardy Plant Society study weekend in Seattle in 2018, in the before time when we were all together. His enthusiasm, plant knowledge, and humor is outstanding. And so be prepared. Your plant wish list tonight is going to explode. And just one little note, we're going to give Jimmy his full allotted time. He's got lots of plans to talk about. So submit questions through the Zoom chat function. And we are going to submit those to Jimmy, who will answer them by email. We're not going to do a live Q&A at the end. So take it away, Jimmy.
Thank you so much, Bob. Hi, everyone. Get this. No. Okay. Ready to go. Very nice. Yeah, ready to go. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Well, I'm here in my kitchen. I do wish I was over there with you. Oh my goodness, I can't describe how much I'd love to be over there. But we're going in the right direction. In Ireland at the weekend, they relaxed all the restrictions. So huge relief. So it's on its way to you. Anyway, we're not going to talk about any of that during this time. We're just going to talk about an awful lot of plants. So I'm going to get going really quickly because I always have far too many images in my talks and I'm always in trouble. So this first image is it's a picture of my shirts. I'm not even wearing a shirt tonight. I'm wearing a sparkly jacket. Yeah, so let's get going. And Bob already said about the book, but the talk is loosely based on the book. It's based on the plants that I love at the moment, and that changes very quickly. Depends the time of the year. I'm completely snowdrop obsessed at the moment. So I'm just going to dive straight in, guys. This is where I grew up. Hunting Brook is on the farm that I grew up on, and it's about 30 minutes inland from the city centre and into the mountains. So it's quite high up. It's about 1,000 feet. We've had a very mild winter so far, thank God. Very, very mild. And this is the house that I grew up in. This is the gardens I grew up in. A lot of rhododendrons, a lot of conifers, a lot of beautiful trees. And in at the side of the house there is the glass house that I started growing my plants in when I was a kid. And many years ago, long time ago, I went to put fuel in the heater and I put the wrong fuel. I put petrol and I blew up the glass house. And I lost all my seedlings. And I nearly lost the house as well. I remember father returning and the fire was just about to spread into the house, but we got it out in time. You can imagine I was in quite a bit of trouble. But anyway, so it was an amazing place to grow up in. My mum was a great gardener, and but it's funny, when I look at it now, I think, when I was in my teens, all I wanted to do was move to the city and have a social life, and which I did, and I didn't come back home for 20 years, and I started Hunting Brook 20 years ago, and this is my mum, and this is us looking at the snowdrops probably like 3 years ago. And she's just amazing. I wouldn't be talking to you today if I didn't have the most amazing mum that really encouraged me every step of the way. She's 91 now, and she still encourages me. And I'm going to get to see her on Wednesday. There's been such restrictions in the nursing home. I haven't seen her since Christmas Day, so I'm very excited. This is her home garden. This is where I grew up. These are the borders, big borders. She was really brave. Like when my father died, she decided to get rid of the big lawns, and she just covered them in manure, covered them in topsoil, and planted them with all these amazing plants. So I'm going to go straight into where Hunting Brook is. It's down in that bottom left-hand corner, a lot of trees, 20 acres. Oh yeah, your acres as well. We're the same language, which is great. So you can see the Wicklow Mountains there, over from you there. And this is the first day as the machine was coming in to start the gardens. I was still working as a gardener in Dublin in Airfield Gardens. And I brought in a house, this house that I'm sitting in now, brought it in from Poland, wooden house. So looking down on the gardens, lot of trees. So, you know, I suppose about nearly 15 acres of it is trees. Beautiful, beautiful trees. And I'm just going to get straight into the planting. And this is probably about 18 years ago, the sort of style that I was working with. It was very easy. It's very easy to work with groups of plants and just plonk them in. You know, it was very short season, I found, whereas I want a long, long season. And the longer the season, the better for my head. I find my herbaceous borders, some of them today, I was looking at them and they're driving me mad because there's just not enough winter interest in them. So I have to really do a lot more with them. But this is all gone. What I love to do is to take out everything from borders every few years, which I've just done now in one of the big borders. And for some reason, I'm not getting inspired. Well, anyway, I have to get inspired in the next few weeks. So this is the same border looking across the countryside, and it's much more of a tapestry of planting. This is more the style that I work with now. It's letting the light in, making sure the light is lighting up the plants, much more see-through, and just bringing that countryside in, using lots of quirky foliage. You know, when I'm putting in perennials, I always think, you know, what can I add in that's quirky, that's going to add a little bit of funkiness to the border, that might make dahlias a little bit more contemporary looking, or not. I don't like the word contemporary, but just make it look a bit more funky looking. And so this is the house painted black. Delighted when I painted it black, actually. And this is kind of quite rare snow. And you were talking about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, I just Googled it when you were talking, and that's 4 degrees Celsius. So we're up at about, during the day at the moment, we're up at about 8 degrees Celsius, and not much frost, a little bit of frost. So this is the Hamamelis. I stuck this in just about 10 minutes before I came on here. I thought, oh my God, I have to show that Hamamelis. That was just amazing today. It's such a good one. But I get rid of that thing at the bottom. That doesn't matter. Yeah, definitely starting to collect Hamamelis. I was just saying, I was while I was sitting here waiting for this to start, I was browsing a catalogue in Holland, and I was coming up with about 20 new Hamamelis I want to buy. The only thing with them is it's just finding space for them that you know, that they don't take over my lovely bright space. But this is super. This is definitely my best at the moment. It's fantastic, and the sun coming through this morning was gorgeous. Yeah, loved them. So we're coming into snow. Snowdrops are really starting to flower here, and I've never opened for snowdrops, and God knows why I agreed to do it. But I have a tour coming from Holland on the 7th of February to see the snowdrops. And until now, it was like my little secret. I hadn't come out of the snowdrop closet, and now I'm like, I'm out, and I have about, I don't know, just well over 350 now, and it's climbing every day. I'm getting new ones, so it's great. I love that, and that's why the book is called A Beautiful Obsession. I love that, just that gorgeous feeling of when you're getting obsessed about a plant. It was kind of happening with Hamamelis today as well. I suppose it's like falling in love, isn't it? So yeah, there's I mean, I could show loads of snowdrops, but I just show a few, just only showing a few, because I'm going to bring you on a journey right through the garden and all the plants. So if you want to take photographs of the names here, it might be easier than having to write it down and miss the photo. Green tear, beautiful snowdrop, bulking up really well. Just a really, 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 really good one. I'm kind of collecting up a lot of different greens at the moment. And then Veronica Cross, such a gorgeous one. Can I click this live transcript closed caption has been enabled? Can I click that off? Does everyone see that thing written at the top there? Live transcription, closed captioning. Can I click that?
Yes,
oh,
we
it's
do.
okay. I clicked it. It's fine. It's off. So yeah, Veronica Cross. Veronica Cross is an amazing plants woman in England. She sadly died about maybe 2 years ago. She had an incredible collection of snowdrops, and this is one of her seedlings. And you know, I just can't wait for the day that I have seedlings like this. So many amazing snowdrops came from her garden, and this one is bulking up nicely. And for some reason, I thought, God, did I move it somewhere? And I was, where did I move it? Anyway, I found it today where it is in the garden. I was going around relabeling them, and I love that job. I just love it. I love going around with like the notebook for the snowdrops, and I did it as a teenager. I kept lists of plants, and I was thinking today, God, that gave me such a thrill doing it, and it's the same thing I had when I was a child. I collect erythroniums as well. Really love them, and I'm sure you grow erythroniums so much better than we do here. But this one, Joanna, is one of the best. Beautiful, kind of that apricot-y peach colors going on in it. Kind of a little bit later flowering. Superb. Just makes, keeping them, in leaf for as long as possible after flowering, so they build up for next year. Putting lots of compost with them is important, like a lot of your good woodland plants. I divide them once the leaves turn yellow, and they've bulked up really well for me. But this is a real cracker. This is one you should all have. And of course, Harvington snow goose with that elegant petals. Looks like a scissors got at them. Beautiful, and bulks up quick as well, as long as it's not too dry or too wet. Yeah, beautiful. And Corydallis. So you're going to hear me saying I collect. And maybe I always say, my friends are saying it to me at the moment, you always say your absolute favorite plants are woodland plants. But I really think deep down, my true love is spring plants, woodland plants. We never fall out of love with them. Corydallis, I was given a talk last year, or before that stupid Brexit came in, and I was given a talk to an English group, and I dropped the hint that I was starting to collect Corydallis, and then a lovely man from England sent me a box of Corydallis to get me started collecting. And now I have probably about, I don't know, there's about 50 or 60 different ones, these types. And I'm trying to build up a Corydallis solida collection as well. I'm only at the very, very start of that. But this is really exciting because there's amazing Corydallis out there. This one came from Peter Korn in Sweden. Really, it's quite a tall one. It's this color. It's beautiful. And again, as long as you don't let it get too dry in summer, you need to keep the moisture in. If they keep going dormant in summer, which they probably will for a lot of you, that they can die out. So loading on the garden compost onto your Corydallis, or Corydallis, I think you say, don't you? Corydallis. But that's a super one, definitely worth keeping an eye out for. And this is one of my absolute favorite plants in the garden. How do I get rid of this thing at the bottom? Maybe I can get rid of this. You know the bar that says mute, stop video, security. Is there a way of getting rid of that?
Like to move it, you can move it.
Oh, I
don't
can
click
move
on
it. Wait,
anything else.
I actually just forget the name of this Corydallis. That's okay. I can see it now. Terracina. Yeah, this is, I know nothing much about it. I just said I'm going to put it in because I thought it was one of the best plants in Huntingbrook last summer. And that man sent it to me, that sent me the Corydallis. Very little on the internet about it. The thing with it is it's good leaf. It's a little bit like geranium madurense leaf. Seems to be really hardy, but it flowered from spring right through into autumn. And it had those lovely shade of yellow with kind of peach and green on the petals. really worth keeping an eye out for this one. If you could get seed, you know, you have that fantastic nursery, Far Reaches, one of my favorite places on earth. Nursery, Kelly and Sue are just amazing. So podophyllums, I'm slowly building up a collection, and I remember thinking I had great podophyllums until I think, Bob, when I was over in Seattle, was at that time I think I went up to Far Reaches, and my goodness, to see their podophyllums. Oh my goodness, I'll never forget that tunnel that had the podophyllums in it. But this one is super. This one I got from Japan, Podophyllum chinai yuan. It's just gorgeous. And they do all their growth quite quickly, and then they just sit there for the summer. But what a great foliage plant. And so important. Leaves are so important in shade. Leaves bring the shade garden through the summer and into autumn, when all the spring plants have finished. The good foliage is so important in shade. And the trilliums. This is Trillium Bob Gordon, which is a really special one. It's a seedling from a man called Bob Gordon in the north of Ireland, and it's got a really soft yellow flower. It's bulking up nicely. The man that gave it to me, he grew them, and he gave out a few of these plants to people to grow. So I had felt really responsible for it. He said he always just divides them after flowering. I'm always terrified to dig them up after flowering. So I've just left it, and each year it gets another stem. So it's a beautiful one, and I'm sure it will be in the trade in years to come. It's very special. I really collect epimediums, and they're quite an easy one to collect now. Well, we can't get any plants from England, so but when I used to go over to the plant fairs the last few years, like in the spring plant fairs, every nursery would have new epimediums. So what do I say about them? What have I learned? I've learned not to have them in too much shade, to get them out into more light, not to be too dry. I grew them on the valley, the banks down in the valley, the slopes of the valley. And I thought it was going to be amazing because I could look up into the flowers. But actually, it was a bit dry for them down there. And I brought them up into my new woodland beds, which you'll see at the end of the talk, which is in about 5 hours. They're much better in a rich soil that doesn't dry out, and getting more light as well. And they love leaf mold. Love leaf mold. I love compost. Leaf mold is really, really good for epimediums. I cut back most of the leaves off them tomorrow. I keep forgetting to do it, because some of them now, the flowers are starting to peep up. Pulmonarias, quite a lot of pulmonarias as well. But I was looking for blue ensign. Is a lovely pulmonary, but doesn't do that well with me. It kind of just a bit small and stunted looking. Whereas this one, Miss Ellie, is much taller, and it's pure blue, deep, deep blue. Fantastic, really good foliage as well. Green with a few silver spots on it. Excellent one. And of course, they're very easy to propagate by division. Whenever you want to do them, really. You could even do them in the summer. I do quite a bit of propagation, division in summer of perennials, of fibrous rooted perennials. It's a really quick way to do the division. I'm on the verge of starting to collect daffodils. We have a very good daffodil nursery in the north of Ireland, and I know he's going to encourage me to start collecting. But this is an old variety, white lady, very elegant, beautiful, tall, gorgeous scent, not massive amount of leaves, so you can kind of bring them through a border. Like that's that big border that we looked at earlier on. And you can see the sprinkling of white daffodils through it, and it's that one, white lady. And that goes back to being a cut flower in the 1890s. So it's a very old variety, and they're the type I like. Yeah, I grow a lot of pseudopanics, quite a lot of different pseudopanics. I just about get away with it. I'm very close to Dublin, like 10-15 minutes from the start of Dublin, really. But I'm a way up. I'm 1,000 feet up. Makes a big difference. This is a really good one, Pseudopanics Black Star. Really dark foliage. And I know for a lot of you, Pseudopanics is probably not not possible to grow. Maybe over if you're over in Portland, and Seattle that way, you might be able to grow pseudopanics from New Zealand, and you can see that luscious black leaves. Pseudopanics crassifolius would be one of the hardiest here. They've grown into quite big trees, and they've taken -15 Celsius. Trying to plant some more Daphnes as well. Some of them are now just coming into bloom. Garden House Ghost, a beautiful white one, is coming into bloom. Jacqueline Postel, a few others. But Mary Rose is really special because it's got this color, really nice and gorgeous scent as well. Really special one. So yeah, trying to have more interest for this time of year. And there's Doris. She's on the floor. I'm not going to move the laptop in case something happens. She's on the floor snoring here beside me. You'll probably hear the sound effects as we go through the talk. She's looking at me. Do you need to tell them that detail? So if you come to visit, and hopefully you'll be able to start visiting again. We really miss all our lovely American friends and all our friends. We haven't had anybody in from outside Ireland much for 2 years, and you know what it's like. Anyway, we're not allowed to talk about that. And alliums, just ordinary alliums, but a sea of them right through the garden. Allium Purple Sensation, Mount Everest, the big tall white one, is super. I always take away the the leaves as they turn white, just because they're so ugly. And you can see it. You can see that whole view out into the countryside. It feels like the garden is going right over into those hills. Whereas at the start, I used some big tall plants blocking that view. Just really think, are you blocking a view that you don't need to block? Bananas there. Oh, the classroom is full of bananas. I should have taken a photo of the classroom because now we can start using the classroom again. I have about 150 banana plants in it. God knows where they're going. And then you have, the sea of alliums, and you just dot these eremioras through it. I mean, there's nothing special in this photograph, but it's really lovely for bridging that gap from spring into summer. And, bringing spires through that shape is really important. And the two eremioras that do well here, most of them die, to be quite honest with you. Any of the fancy colors, the oranges and the apricots and peaches, they die. Whereas Eremurus robustus and Himalayense are the best at coming back year after year. And then the border where the white daffodils were, straight after the white daffodils, it explodes into orange and pink, where it's mass planting of Geum totally tangerine and Lichnus hillgrounds. Lichnus hillgrounds is fantastic. It's sterile. It flowers all summer here. It's really vivid pink. Now, if you don't like vivid pink, then you won't like it. But when you just have those two combined en masse, they bridge the gap from spring into summer really well. They're really reliable, and you can have an explosion of color at the end of the spring color, when sometimes gardens go a little bit green. You can see them there. Geum totally tangerine, it's as common as muck here, but that is good. There's nothing wrong with common plants. They're good plants. And I think it's so important we use those plants. And they're the repetition plants that hold the garden together. Lichnus hillgrounds is really good because it bulks up well and you can divide it. Now, a lot of the time I dig them up and I put them in pots. And I actually put them in tunnels for this. They haven't even gone into the tunnels yet, but they're sometimes I just bring them on in the tunnels so that I know they're going to be good big plants, planting them out in March or April. You don't have to do that, but just like it can get so wet here sometimes that silverleaf plants can suffer. But they are sterile, and so is the geum, so they flower for long. And then popping in cactus. I'm going to do a lot more with cactus this summer. And then last summer, I repeated the Hesperus, the sweet rocket through that bed, en masse through the bed. So it gave another layer of interest over the geums. which was really, really nice. The mauve one. You sow the seeds the end of June. And it's such a lovely plant. Old-fashioned plant, but that's all right. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with old-fashioned. But how do you give it a bit of fun? The year before, I would have had different pseudopanics through that bed. Oh no, there was one called Toatira, and it was beautiful, but they died in the winter on me. So I kind of lacked that kind of bit of fun through that bed. So I put these outrageous lilies through the bed, and they were a bit obnoxious looking. I actually bought them for their foliage. I was doing a recording for a program that I think I was doing, and I bought these lilies because they've lovely foliage, and I wove them through the bed. I didn't even look at the label to see what flowers they had, and then these huge, big, over-the-top flowers came out. I actually thought they were a bit of fun. I know a lot of people didn't like them. I don't really care. So there's that same bed moving on with lots of cosmos and lots of red hot pokers and lilies. And lilies were just, they were just fun. They were just like falling all over the place drunk, and they were like, yeah, I really just fun. Yeah, so you can see the light coming through. I'm very lucky that the sun rises in that bed, and they all get backlit. And yeah, lily and pink perfection. And Heliopsis. I grew quite a lot of Heliopsis last summer as well. Now the jury's out on them whether they actually come back, because with me, like the likes of Echinacea, just die. They don't survive ever. Whereas I just wonder, are Heliopsis similar to Echinacea? So that's kind of looking through that area of the garden. You know, I put in more pots, and there's a little glimpse of Billy, the little dachshund. He's over in his armchair, head hanging outside of the armchair here. It's the middle of the night for those two. And you can see cactus dotted through those beds as well, those white cactus. They're here in big pots, huge big pot of it here beside me on the table. And yeah, I like to have a bit of fun with kind of putting cactus where they wouldn't usually grow. And you can see that's really getting into summer in the garden. Getting just blessed with that lovely light. And you can see it's just this kind of mad mix of plants. No big groups of plants. Going same bed, just bringing in a little bit more silver through the pink, just calming the pink down as the summer goes on. Different Artemisias coming through it, looking really nice together. I grew a lot of Sweet William the last few years, Dianthus barbatus. This is one of the best. Now this color is even deeper pinky purple, and it's Ushberg, really nice one. And I would sow seeds of these, you know, in the summer, and then sow some in the spring. So then you have them flowering right through the summer and into autumn. So you have a really long season of interest. So I often do a few different sowings of biennials and annuals, which I'll tell you a little bit more as we're going along. Definitely more, there's a lot of new Dianthus barbatus out there, and really vibrant colors, lovely scent as well. Now, I did a lot from seed last summer, and they're all down in the tunnel. Oh, couldn't believe it. When I came back from holidays last week, a lot of them were putting up flowers. I don't want them to flower now. So I'm thinking, if I cut them back, will they flower in the summer? Well, I'm just going to cut them back. And they really do remind me of my childhood. But some of them are really outrageous, the color pink in them, which is great. And if you want tall cosmos, a lot of the cosmos they're breeding now they've got very small, like a lot of plants. They've just dwarfed so many plants, which is really annoying. And some plants can be awfully ugly when they're made very small. Cosmos Radiance is good and tall, and Cosmos Dazzler, you all know Dazzler. The Radiance is really tall. It's 6 foot tall. It's beautiful, deep or big pink flowers, and then Dazzler is deeper pink. But they're the two tall ones. They're absolutely gorgeous. You just have to remember when you're putting in plants like that they're not swamping out other plants in the summer. You know, that bed would have had a lot of dahlias in, and I have to really try not to weave too many annuals through that bed this year. I find it very hard not to do things like that. And this is a good reminder given this talk, actually. So looking through, we're kind of coming into the middle part of the garden, the part of the garden that I've just dug everything out of over the last month and a half. And now I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. But this is when it did look good. And a lovely Sanguisorba there, Martin's mulberry, flowers kind of mid to the end of June with those lovely big fat flowers like mulberries and stems. Really gorgeous one. Easy to grow, not too tall. That's that bed. Again, we call this part of the garden Ashley's garden. Ashley was a good friend of mine who passed away a few years ago, and we called this after him. And now I need his help now to figure out what I'm going to do with it. I know what I want to do. I'd like to actually get a machine in, take it all out, all the soil, because it's full of bulbs, and the bulbs, I know the bulbs are all going to come up. And anyway, I'm not going to tell you anymore. I'm in the middle of a design crisis. Anyway, I'm sure it'll all figure out. Bananas, I have a whole load of them, like it might end up in more bananas. What I'd love to do with bananas is plant them where they're not cluttered by other plants, not combining the bananas with other plants. I remember seeing that in Chanticleer. One of the times I was in Chanticleer, where in the teacup garden, where they had the bananas planted, but they didn't have loads of plants up around them. They only had very low plants. I thought, it just looks they look beautiful when they're not too cluttered. But it's not my specialty, that's not cluttering. Salvia there, fulgens, we'll come to that later. And this is the sort of planting in this whole area, using lots of interesting leaves, lots of fairly ordinary perennials, I suppose. Astrantia boan, which is a really good pink astrantia, as long as it's not too dry in summer for the astrantias. It's a sterile astrantia. So always try and look for the sterile astrantia. The sterile astrantias, because they flower for much longer. That will flower with me from kind of April through to the autumn. I hope you understand my Irish accent. Yeah, I'm talking very fast because I know I'm under pressure with time. Jesus, it's close. Senecio cristobalensis. I think that originally came over from America. Somebody brought it over. I won't say who brought it over. Senecio cristobalensis. I wouldn't garden without this plant. That's the plant in the middle of the screen there with those velvet purple leaves. Fabulous plant. Fabulous foliage plant. It is tender, but there it is. Look at that. And to be able to repeat that leaf through a border in summer, oh, you don't want any other foliage plants. It's fantastic. Kind of ugly enough flowers. They flower maybe in winter if you have them in a glass house or something. Cut them off. That came from Tony Avent originally, that banana, down in Plantolites. We're very lucky to have Plantolites. Musa Bengal tiger. Just some of those really good Musa with stripes. Really like them. Bengal tiger being one of the best. Again, that's that area. It with its big leaves, looking lovely. And that's Brasiopsis mitis. And I have a few different Brasiopsis. Again, they're tender for me, so they're definitely tender for you guys. But sometimes a tender plant is worth it, worth the trouble when it's so beautiful, so amazing. Look at that, so gorgeous, love it. You know, that's before I painted the house black, but lots of leaves. So I'm probably as much about leaves as I would be about flowers. Yeah, just outside the classroom, lots of leaves, lots of leaves, lots of leaves. Not so many leaves. And then going in to look at dahlias. Dahlias, you know, when you're talking about dahlias, you need to wear a dahlia crown. I was recording a section on dahlias for my online courses, and a friend of mine made me this dahlia crown while I was doing the filming. So it's very uncomfortable. The wire was sticking into my head. But anyway, it's great. So yeah, I'm really tried out a whole lot of new dahlias last summer, which was very exciting. Dahlia burlesca there, really gorgeous dahlia, beautiful color, lovely kind of peachy apricot pinky kind of color, really nice. But like, how can you give dahlias a lift with a leaf? by adding in that Chefra macrophylla and that lovely kind of orange undiment, that dusting on it goes really well with the dahlia. And then pop in that Alstroemeria Indian Summer, lovely together. I grew those Chefras from seed and repeated them through that border last year with the dahlias and with Cosmos. So it really changed those simple kind of old-fashioned plants like Cosmos and dahlias when you add in a leaf like that. That's Dahlia burlesque. It's a really good one. And it bulks up well. Good big tubers by the end of the summer. So you can see through that border, I also used quite a lot of this Heliopsis Bleeding Hearts with its dark, dark foliage and its rusty orange flowers. Beautiful, see-through, elegant, upright plant. This is the one now. I don't know whether they come back well. Hopefully it will. And one of the best dahlias last year for bulking up after its first year, had really big tubers, was Cornell Bronze, which is a lovely shade of orange. It's not too harsh, and worked really well. And just when you add it in there, they look lovely together. Those dahlia, Cornell Bronze, and the Heliopsis. Burning Hearts, is it? Burning Hearts, I think. Yeah. Bleeding Hearts. Such a lovely plant. And each flower seemed to last for the whole summer nearly. Very, very long flowering. And dahlia, Night Butterfly. Gorgeous dahlia. Really, like the bees can get in and get the nectar. Easy one to grow, bulks up well, widely available here anyway. I know you have, I drool over some of your websites for dahlias. Yeah, we won't talk about smuggling in this talk. We won't talk about it. No, I was told to stop talking about smuggling. Anyway, Dahlia American Dawn is gorgeous. Look at the colors and that. And it's much more beautiful than this photograph. It's hard one to photograph, but just adding in a little bit of grass with it. There's echinaceas in there which will have died, but each year I buy them. And then that silver buddleia, I think it's Viciosima, really nice one. Look at that American Dawn. Ooh, so nice. It's so exciting because like another 5 weeks, the dahlias will be starting to be potted up. They're still out in the tunnels on the glass side. They were never even brought into the sheds yet. So they probably won't have to come in this summer. Nyphophia is adding in that spire through the beds. Nyphophia Gladness, one of the best. Really good, bulks up well, repeated through, leads the eye along with a strong vertical, a strong color. Think about what kind of spires can you use through your borders to lead the eye along. If they weren't there, this border would be there'd be nothing to kind of bring the eye along. It'd be kind of wild and lovely, but just the Nyphophias do well. I was tidying up the leaves on them today, and the spires of the Actia Blickfang, beautiful spire, very tall, one of the best Actias. I know you have like lots over there. As long as it's not too dry in summer, it's important. The madness of midsummer, Actias, Fennel, Sanguisorba Arnhem, really tall one, really tall. Needs a little bit of staking. I don't stake much. I don't have time to do that. I don't have that much help, and I don't grow plants that need a lot of staking generally. But how do you get this a little bit different? You're adding in the Populus glauca there. That popular will be pollard. Very hard for an Irish person to say that. Populus glauca will be pollarded. And it has these amazing red new foliage. And blackthorn, Sanguisorba blackthorn, one of the best. If you get the evening sun or the rising sun on it, it'll light up like a sparkler. When I did the trial of Sanguisorbas, that was one of the best. It stays upright, it doesn't flop over. Really, really good. Linaria poached eggs, super, with its spires as well. Lots of new linarias out there worth growing, and a lot of them aren't so bad at seeding around as well. Linaria poached eggs. This Eryngium, don't be put off when you see Guatemalensis on it. It's worth giving it a go if you can find it. It came through -15 Celsius. Now that's very cold with me. I've grown it in different beds. I have it in the sand garden now. It's just probably one of the best new perennials on the scene, I think. It's about 4 foot high, easy to grow from seed, Guatemalensis. Gorgeous. Dipianum, another wonderful Eryngium. Must collect the seed off that tomorrow. I've said that for the last 4 months. It should be sown fresh as well. The same with Astrantias. Sow the seed fresh in the autumn. One of the best deep coloured Astrantias. It's a reddish purple colour. And it does come true from seed, Jill Richardson. Really good. Can someone tell me what time I'm finishing at? It's 23:47 here. Do I have to finish in 10 minutes? No?
You'll have until 10 minutes after the hour.
Oh, good. Good. That's why I was rushing. I thought I was 10 minutes after the hour. Great. Anyway, Astrantia Jill Richardson, I said you can grow it from seed, and most of the seedlings will be the same as the parent. And Boan is one that I've grown for years. I mean, there's so many different Astrantias now. They're not all good. They've all, I'm a devil for like, that's a new Astrantia, I must have it. But they're not all good. So just keep an eye on, especially those sterile ones. Some of them are great because they flower for so long. And Monardas. I remember years ago a good trial done in Mount Cuba on Monardas. It's worth looking up their website actually on Monardas on that trial, to see which ones don't get mildew as well. This one doesn't get mildew. It's an absolute beauty. And I love it. Even when the petals fall off, you're left with these really colourful bracts. Great, great plant. As long as you have a heavy clay soil for the Monardas. So if you have a light, sandy, dry soil, you're not going to do that well. And lobelias. I use quite a lot of this lobelia for late summer. And sometimes I don't put it out until midsummer because there's no room for it. So as I cut back other plants, I can weave this lobelia through. Now, most of these sort of lobelias get gobbled up by slugs. Our slugs and snails here are the size of seals, huge, and they love these plants, but not quite as much. They don't eat this one quite as much as the other ones. Like Queen Victoria gets eaten before you plant it. It's absolute rubbish here. But this has lasted years for me. It's sometimes it's out all winter and it's fine. It doesn't seem to get eaten as much in the spring. And you divide lobelias in March. That's when you have lovely rosettes. They're a lovely one to divide, lovely one to do if you're teaching a class because they're really easy to divide. They just come apart of nothing. And there's Tanya's good if you want to bring in that vivid pink in with the lobelias. So weaving through those spires for late summer, if you want those vivid colors, mix that lobelia Tanya and lobelia Hadsman purple together. And maybe some orange calendulas through that and whatever else. Roscoe's, I have a real soft spot for Roscoe's. Harvington Raw Silk. Oh, this is so delicious. It's that beautiful shade of, it's a pale cream. It's a cream with a tiny bit of yellow and green in it. Bulks up really well. I don't know if they're hardy for you, but certainly I've always read is plant them deep if you're in colder places and put plenty of mulch on top of them. Not deep shade, but not full sun either, and not too dry. And I've sown seeds of these, and I have a big seed tray full of them up. Roscoe Spice Island, fantastic. Tall with deep wine colored stems. Flowers late, flowers in September. tall, really, really good one. Super. Spice Island. Just combine it there with some calocasius. And eucomas, twinkle stars, such a stupid name. But good plants, because I find a lot of the eucomas flop over. And I only think about staking things when they're flopping over. But this one didn't seem to flop over as much. I mean, they're tricky here. Like, I mean, I should have brought them in, and then I just said, oh, do you know what? I'll leave them out, and just if they survive, they survive. So looking up through the house later in the summer there for Bascom, really good for Bascom. A lot of our Bascom's just died for me, too wet. 16 Candles has been here for years, maybe 15 years in one spot. So it's a good one. Gelito seeds do it. You can get Gelito seeds. And there it is popping up in the middle of pseudopanics. So how do you make an old-fashioned verbascum a little bit more funky? Well, I didn't actually do that. They verbascum seeded in the middle of the pseudopanics. They created their own funky look, but I think they look really good together. Wonderful bee plant. One of the best plants for bees last summer in the garden. You should, if you want to get bees in your garden, grow verbascums, and especially that one was particularly good for bees. I filmed a television program last summer here in Ireland, and one of the gardens we filmed had amazing pots and containers. And after the show, after we filmed, the next day I went out and I bought this really big, beautiful zinc container. So I'm getting really into container gardening. And I'll never forget. I went to Chanticleer and did a few weeks, it's 6 weeks there, something like that, when I started Honeybrook, and worked with each gardener. So I've really fond memories of that amazing garden. It's my favorite garden in the world, is Chanticleer. Really is. Anyway, you're looking through the garden there, kind of adding in more paths these days, to kind of trying to get into the beds. I think I'd much prefer to be able to get in and walk in, and then I've more edges for growing plants as well. Oh, there's the doggies. If you could hear, the two of them are snoring away here now. Salvias. Many years ago, I went to the Salvia Summit in San Francisco, which was at the time of some big election in America, which I won't talk about. Salvia involucrata Putin. I definitely saw that at that conference, and that next year I grew 245 different salvias. That's when the obsession was at its height. And so I don't grow as many now, but I grow some really good ones. This is probably the best plant for September in my garden. Huge, big pink flowers, 6, 7, 8 foot high. It is hardy with me, probably not with you, but it's always worth experimenting. Salvia fulgens, red velvet flowers, tall, fantastic plant. And Salvia patens guanajuato, with its massive big blue flowers. It's really worth trying to find this one. And I just treat them like daily tubers, these ones. Well, actually I dig them up and stuff them in a pot and keep them in the tunnel. But you can let them dry out as well. Salvia patens guanajuato, much more superior than just the straight Salvia patens. The Aralia trees around the garden. These were collected in China, and they were the first time they were ever found was when we found them in China, and they're kind of like the signature plant around the house now, getting quite big now. And I'm not sure. Well, I know one person in the audience tonight has been in the garden. That's Anne O'Neill. Some of you know Anne. Anne would have worked in Brooklyn Botanic. And Anne is the most amazing gardener. I know her sister well, and they lived about an hour from here. And Anne would have seen the garden a few times and seen these trees. So hi, Anne. Schefflers. Oh, I'm big into the Araliaceae family, and I love Schefflers. Oh yeah, I love them. And they're really starting to take off down the valley. And I remember first seeing this. I saw this in Chanticleer, And it was up near the house in Chanticleer, and it was surviving the winter. And somewhere else on the East Coast, somewhere cold anyway. It is worth experimenting with them. Scheffler Delavei, shelter, well drained, I think is important. Definitely shelter, not a cold east wind. Wouldn't like. I don't know who he is now. That's gone double that height now in me. And I have, they're one of the theme plants through the valley. Big leaf rhododendrons, Schefflers, large leaf magnolias, kind of quirky conifers, all that sort of thing. This whole range of new Schefflers. I have to admit that Scheffler died in the middle of the summer, and I don't know what happened to it. No reason why it died. I thought that was really unfair. Corydal, that's not Corydalus. That's Cordyline. Cordyline indivisa from New Zealand. Showing off I am. Corydalus as well, I've written there. Sorry, Cordyline. And they're repeated through the valley. And if you get to come to visit, don't miss the valley. It's so special. It's special before I even got at it. It was a really special place, and it's a very special place for your mind down there. It's the place to go. Amazing during the pandemic, watching people go through the garden quicker last summer and down into the valley, because they really needed to be in nature and immersed, hugged by Mother Earth down in the valley. And that's the way you feel when you're down there. Big table at the base of the valley. And then coming into autumn, the acers, building up a collection of acers as well. Acer Aki High, fantastic. And it's so exciting now because the autumn color is starting to really kick in the garden. And that's making it's extending the seasons for me. It's extending the seasons. And it's just, I'm not a good winter person, especially that October, November, December time. They're the tricky months for me. Lindra Trilova. Lindra, you grow, and Lindra's a native over in America as well. That is a super one. Slow growing, but really good slow growing shrub with the most incredible autumn color. That kind of yellow and red. Beautiful. So I'm just going to show you the sand garden now. It's only 10 minutes. And so when the first lockdown happened, I was in the middle of doing this. And we were so restricted that I think at that stage you could only go 2 kilometers. And then we moved to 5. And we were 5 kilometers for a lot of the year. We couldn't move further than 5. But anyway, I had this exciting project to work on. And this was a really messy area at the other side of the house. We haven't looked at this area yet. I gave a talk recently and I heard afterwards everyone thought I had taken out the whole garden and done this new cactus garden. I haven't taken out everything and done a new cactus garden. I did a new garden. So it's kind of double the size of the planting area, the bright planting area. And it turned into a complete and utter mess. It was a meadow that had gone mad and didn't work for me. Tried to grow perennials and bulbs through it, but the buttercups took over and it was just a mess. And this is what it was like at the end of 2 years ago. So decided to skim off the soil, the top layer. I don't use chemicals here, so we decided just to take off the weedy layer and then used hose pipes to mark out the area. And I want to do something really different. And I think that's the thing. If you're not coming up with a new idea for an area of your garden, I have to listen to myself now. You need to do something radical. You need to do something really different that's going to really excite you. So I decided I wanted new woodland beds. I wanted lovely, clean woodland beds. Woodland beds get dirty so easy. They do with me anyway. Get weedy. So I don't draw big designs on paper. I hate it inside when it's bright outside. And I use a lot of hose pipes. I'd spend a lot of time designing the plants, all right, or coming up with the plant designs. And I raised up all these beds. So I had no chance of it being wet. Because this was a wet area, but I didn't want a wet garden. So all the beds were raised. These are new woodland beds. This is the sand garden. So we put in this sand garden where the subsoil was broken up. this layer of beautiful soil with a lot of grit through it was put in. And then on top of that, there's a 5-inch layer of sand. And we made these 2 huge big sand gardens that kind of wrapped around part of the house there. And I wanted to grow a new lot of plants. I wanted to grow more of that kind of Mediterranean look. I wanted to grow cactus and succulents where I couldn't in the other beds, really, because they were too cluttered. So it's starting to come into shape. And you can see last spring, we put this beautiful this beautiful color on the paths. So it's a beige dusting. So it really framed all the beds, made a huge, huge difference. There's Billy thinking he's a really tall dog. And that's the same view that was that messy meadow. I dug up acers, I dug up loads of plants. I didn't have a big budget. I never have a very big budget for plants in the garden. That's what I'm spending on snowdrops at the moment. But generally, I like to use plants from around the garden. I swap a lot of plants and grow a lot from seed. That year, I divided so many plants because I had the time. I wasn't able to go anywhere. And this is what it started to look like. So completely different style. And you can see the sand gardens wrap around the glass house. And this was the first year where kind of a lot of cactus in it. I probably made I was make mistakes, but I used a lot of annuals through it and got too cluttered. So I just had to be careful using annuals. So it's just been a lot of fun, that kind of more sparse planting, rather than lush, rich, herbaceous borders. It just gave me a chance to grow different palette of plants and really use these cactus. Orange Cosmos Tango there. Just going to keep flicking and watching the time. And again, these white cactus, you see them popping up over the garden, and they're getting bigger. And then, you know, I'm getting into conifers. That's my next thing. I know you guys do conifers really well. And you know, people were appalled that I was growing petunias last year. I was like, why not grow petunias? And I had this cattle trough and I grew cactus, petunias and conifers together. It made so many people ill, I think, when they looked at it. And I was like, perfect. I loved it. I loved the mix of kind of miniature conifers and petunias and cactus. Yeah, a bit of fun. Isn't that what we want? Jeez, I feel so much better about my garden after giving this talk. Isn't it funny? We need to have fun. We need to feel that feeling of joy and happiness about our garden going through us, don't we? We need to. How do we get that? Well, thank you, because this is after giving me more excitement about my garden again. Rhodiola, just a few plants that are in the sand garden. I love rhodiolas. This one, Heterodonta, which is kind of silvery leaves. Gorgeous plant, really nice plant. So I'll just skip through these. Euphorbia segeriana with that lovely chartreuse color green, really great color. Floppy euphorbia, but it's really nice when it's woven through plants. Good bedding, you know, that better, Echium blue better, blue flowers. Just flick through. Phytolacas mixed with Californian poppies. Doris again. A lot of aeoniums. And then you're coming up into the room that I'm in right now, looking through out into the garden, packed full of cactus. There's the white cactus again. Oh, I didn't know where I was at the top. So guys, there, I just said I'd put up the website if you want that. There's a new website, huntingbrookgardens.com. And what we've done on the last while is we have basically pulled all my online courses together, all my live master classes together, and we've made this whole package where people can sign up for a month or for a year, and they get access to everything and access to me as well, to chat with me and a closed Facebook group. But we did loads of online courses, and we have a propagation course on it as well. So I just thought I'd say that's it there. You can take a photograph if you want to look it up. learn.huntingbrookgardens.com/membership-trial. Jesus, I don't know why it's so long. But anyway, you'll find it on my website as well. And there, give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook. I post every day. I like to do videos, and you can really follow the garden through the Instagram and Facebook, and sure, say hello to me there. And I really, really hope I'm going to get over to see you guys in the next few years. It just feels so strange. I think is it 3 years since I was over now? Seattle 3 years ago, I think. It will be 3 years, yeah. So listen, thank you so much. And I really enjoyed that. And thanks for giving me that feeling of excitement about my garden after giving that talk. It probably sounds strange to you to hear somebody saying that, but I just needed that kind of kick again. And thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and tomorrow. It sounds amazing. And we'll get to look at it, hopefully. Hopefully look at some of the recordings of it. So thank you so much. I believe I finished on time.
You did, Jimmy. Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can.
Sorry,
Yeah, Bob.
So
Yeah.
I think we have a few minutes, according to my watch. I think it would be useful. People are asking, what zone are you in? Can you equate your highs and your low temperatures? Just so people have some reference point.
We kind of get kind of usually down to about, it's Celsius, so you'll have to convert it. So usually around down to -9, -10. -8, -9, -10, that kind of time. That would be the coldest we get. And now we did go down to -15 Celsius a few years ago. Our problem is with a lot of plants is that we get a lot of wet, a lot of winter wet. I'm sure you know that about Ireland. So we get a short season. We can get frost until the end of May, and we can get frost in September. So we don't get a warm, generally don't get a warm September, October. So it's a short season in a way, I suppose, but not, even though, the Corydalus are all coming up now and all the bulbs. And we have a long spring, like we have spring from now right through until May.
You're sort of like Portland, like we are here in a way.
Yeah.
And your annual rainfall, kind of give us the range on that. What do you?
I don't know, loads. Well, no, we don't. Actually, I say loads. We're definitely not getting as much. The west of Ireland gets the rain coming in off the Atlantic a lot more, and Dublin is getting much drier. But I live in the mountains. My deck out here in front of the house, it's never dry, really. It's never dry. So I don't measure anything like that, so I don't know. But we get lots of rain.
So the cactus that are in the new garden, do you have to lift those, or are those?
Oh God, yeah. They have to come in. They're all in here with me in the house. Yeah.
And then one last one. Any type of special compost or fertilizer in your gardening scheme? And I'm sure it varies depending on the section of the garden.
I'm spreading compost every day at the moment. It's and it's from the waste. It's from the brown bin. A company have given it to me actually, and it's beautiful. So it's brown bin from people recycle. But I have my own compost as well. Don't use as much manure. I'm trying not to get plants too rich, grow them too rich, and I don't feed as much anymore. So I'm trying to keep lower nutrients and keep plants from not falling over. Definitely not using as much manure. I feed the dahlias, I feed the bananas, and that's about all I feed during the summer.
Okay, and one last question. Thank you for labeling your slides with the plant names. That's so helpful to everybody. Can we get a slide list from you with the plant names? I mean, you can send that to me, and then I can share it. We'll find the right platform for that to share. Is that possible?
Yeah, I can do a slide list. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have to type it out though. Yeah. Okay. I could send you a rough one, and then you can correct it.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. I'll send a list. Yeah, and in the next few days, I'll send you one, Bob. You just
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jimmy. Maybe we'll let you go to bed now, huh?
I want to go out dancing now. I'm so excited.
Right. Time for party.
All
Thanks
right.
again, Jimmy.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you, Jimmy. Great talk. Have a good night. Thank you.
Nice. Sleep well.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, next on our tonight's agenda is our second symposium speaker, and it gives me great pleasure to be able to introduce our next speaker. A native of Atlanta, our speaker graduated from Auburn University with a degree in ornamental horticulture and later worked as a municipal arborist, a county extension agent for University of Georgia, an airport landscape manager, and as a horticulturist. She's also a 2020 alumna of the Longwood Gardens Society of Fellows. She's a freelance horticultural writer, lecturer, and author, co-founder of BIPOC Court, and founder of the social media platform Conquer the Soil, which raises horticultural awareness through topics in Black garden history and current events. Her first book, entitled Conquer the Soil, Black America, and the Untold Stories of Our Country's Gardeners, Farmers, and Growers, is due later this year. So please give a warm welcome to Abra Lee as she takes us on a virtual road trip to celebrate plant people across America. Abra, it's all yours.
Hey, everybody. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Somebody, yeah?
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
excellent. Yay. Thank you so much for that very warm introduction. I certainly appreciate you. And I'm going to go on and share my screen and let me know if you can see it.
Yes,
Is
we
it
can.
visible? Okay, awesome. So you can see where it says great. We are going on a great American garden road trip. And I'm so excited y'all are here with me this evening to meet some of these folks who I consider a part of the Conquer the Soil family. These are the people that I talk to, I dream about at night, I research, I love, and I hope that you will learn to love them too on this journey today. So the first thing we're going to do is Bob Hyland is going to drive this bus for our road trip. He's going straight to LaGuardia. He's flying to Ireland, picking up Jimmy, bringing him back to LaGuardia, and going to drive him around America. So look at that, Jimmy. Just like that, you made it here in America to get that tour that you wanted, and it won't be quite 3 years, and hopefully we get to see you soon. And I do want to thank you for the wonderful presentation you gave before, because those were beautiful slides, and I can't see where you have any design stress in your life at all, because it's just gorgeous, gorgeous. And you were so gracious with your knowledge today. So now that we've gotten Jimmy on board, y'all, we are going to hit these American streets and meet some people in Black garden history. And our first stop is the great state of Ohio. And I want to introduce y'all to Charles William Costello. This gentleman is a man who decided to become an artist while watching old school, y'all, how people used to paint the storefronts and paint in front of storefronts. And he thought, well, if that's what it takes to be an artist, then I can be that too. And he taught himself how to do art, and his interest in insects peaked when one day he was at a picnic and an insect fell into his glass, and he was just enamored by the colors and the just beautiful scales of the insects and the shapes and the sizes. And so that is what got him excited about entomology. But he didn't just get into a professional career as an entomological artist. Charles William Costello had a whole career as a magician, like a magician traveling act. He had caravans, he had employees, and one day, sadly, all of that burned down. And in that meantime, in Ohio, during the 1940s, he had some of his artwork at one of the kind of like what we call the Boys and Girls Club, like the YMCA type buildings. And one of the professors from Ohio State saw the work and invited him to become an entomological artist for the department. And during his tenure at Ohio State for about 6 years in the 1940s, he drew charts of insects, animals, invertebrate, you name it. And he did tens of thousands of these charts. And the one that you see on the right is one that his niece, Jackie Holland, was nice enough to send me a picture of some of his artwork that exists at Ohio State to this day. And when asked about the importance of his art, Charles William Costello told the interviewer that the same way that the soldiers in World War II were trained to look at planes, either enemy or friendly fire. That's the way that he taught his students to look at the insects, essentially as beneficial or non-beneficial. So shout out to anybody on here that has Ohio roots and the outstanding Charles William Costello. Now we're going to hit up Indiana, a place I haven't even been until today. Now I am in Indiana on the virtual road trip with y'all. And this is Mrs. Dora Oma Atkins Powell Blackburn. I just love a lady with 5 names in her name. That's just so important. Look at how important she is. And this is a woman who majored in botany at Butler University. And at the age of 21, she was essentially taking over the Atkins flower shop that her mother started, because by the age of 23, both of her parents had passed away. And so she took up the study of botany because she deeply wanted to understand flowers, floriculture. This is a woman who for 56 years had her business in Indianapolis, Indiana. She was one of the pioneer Black business people in that state. And she would go to conferences to learn about floriculture and flowers, and was very active in her community, just absolutely beloved there in Indiana. So Dora Oma Atkins Powell Blackburn. Dora Oma Atkins Powell Blackburn is her name. And she has done a huge contribution to floriculture and also lived into a very advanced age. So flowers do your life good, apparently. Now we are going to head, actually we're going to head on down south to my territory, y'all. Tennessee, the neighboring state to Georgia, where I am in Atlanta, Georgia this evening. And this is Dr. Neil McAlpin. This is a gentleman who graduated from one of the HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, for those who may not know what HBCU means. And Dr. Neil McAlpin studied horticulture there, and then went on to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, studied there as well, and is a Rutgers grad. That's where he got his PhD in horticulture from. Now, Dr. McAlpin was internationally famous for his work in peaches and also in orchids. And so with peaches, he believed that everybody should be able to grow food on the land that they had, no matter what type of land it was. And what he noticed while living in Nashville is that the lots are getting smaller. There's becoming more people. I think that everybody should be able to still have their own peach tree. And he wanted to have an appropriate size. And that is what he worked on to propagate while he was at Tennessee State University. And the young lady that you see on the right is holding, that was just a student during the time at Tennessee State. She's holding one of the orchids that he also grew and cultivated. And this gentleman was also very big on beautification and beautifying communities and making sure that the landscape was intact, tidy, and looking lovely. Dr. McAlpin also lived well into his 80s. He was beloved in the Tennessee State community, and there is even to this day a scholarship in this gentleman's name. So Dr. Neil McAlpin of Tennessee State University. So now we're going to take it out west to Montana. And some of y'all recognize this picture. Y'all recognize it because it is the famous Mary Fields, better known as Stagecoach Mary. If you, over the holidays or maybe around Thanksgiving, saw that Netflix movie, The Harder They Fall, Stagecoach Mary is portrayed in there with a fictitious story. And she's called Stagecoach Mary for a reason, because she ran a stagecoach. This is a woman who was born into slavery in Tennessee and delivered the mail, eventually made her way out west to Montana and delivered the mail in the Wild West. And when I say Wild West, I mean the Pow Pow, Buffalo Bill, the wild ones, y'all, the Wild West, the thing that you hear about. She had to fight off wolves and bandits and thieves. She had to fight off the weather just to get the people their mail on time and intact. Now, one of her things that she loved was to drink at the saloons. She loved to eat at the hotel. She was beloved in her community, and she loved her baseball team, which you can see on the right, the Cascade, Montana baseball team. And there she is with the picture on the far right of that picture. Now, what's important about Stagecoach Mary and her love for baseball and her love for the Wild West? Well, she deeply, deeply loved flowers. And I thought it was important to incorporate people like her because everybody isn't a professional, meaning getting paid for it, like a Charles William Costello or Dora Oman Atkins Powell Blackburn, or even a Dr. Neil McAlpin. Sometimes it's just the everyday people that do it out of love, like Stagecoach Mary. And what she did for her baseball team in Cascade, Montana, is for the home team and the visiting team, she will make 10 buttonhole bouquets to pass out to everyone. And she would make 5 really large bouquets of flowers for the team from her garden for the people that hit home runs. And though this is a very grainy picture, this is indeed Mary Fields, Stagecoach Mary, right there in her garden with her flowers. And this is where she was able to make or pull the floriculture to make those beautiful bouquets. Now, this is a woman who also is a self-taught horticulturist. And I think that it's important because for me, though I went to school at Auburn, we would spend, and I grew up in Atlanta, we would spend our weekends down in Barnesville, Georgia, the rural dirt road country. And my great aunts and great uncles and my mama were raised on that farm and where I spend my weekends. And those people around me were indeed self-taught horticulturists. They run circles around me and probably around a lot of y'all on this call because they were just born into the land and they built it up. So I wanted to mention the woman that you see on the right because of that, because she herself was a self-taught horticulturist. Now, her name is Ethel Bradley, and we have made it, praise the Lord, we have made it out to the great state of California where it is warm and sunny because it is cold in the South. It is cold on the East Coast. It is certainly cold probably up north by now. So we welcome the sunshine of California and we welcome the story of Ethel Bradley. Now, Bradley was born in Tyler, Texas, and the name Bradley in Los Angeles, if that rings a bell to you, that is because she was the wife of Mayor Tom Bradley, the first Black mayor of the city of Los Angeles. And during his mayoralship, it was decided, just like the governor lives in the governor's mansion and the president lives in the White House, it would be great if the mayor of Los Angeles had their own home. And the Bradleys didn't decide this, but the Getty oil heirs donated the Getty house because they wanted the mayor to have a home to live in. So he left South Central Los Angeles, moved into the Getty house. Now, at the Getty house, Ethel Bradley was able to do some wonderful work with horticulture. Specifically, she had a fuchsia house at the Getty house where she grew her own fuchsias. She loved working with the landscape, and she talked about raising children's chicken and also her plants while there. So Ethel Bradley represents just the everyday woman who loves her plants, and to me is somebody super special in the world of Black garden history. Now, I also want to take y'all on a brief drive. We've left, I just mentioned Ethel Bradley was from Texas and moved out to California, and now we're actually in the state of Texas. And don't judge me by the background, y'all. I realize that's not Texas, but this is an imaginary road trip. It is meant to be fun, so deal with it. I guess it's probably like the western Arizona or something, but nevertheless, this is a gentleman named Harding Newsome. So this gentleman graduated from Prairie View, another HBCU, another historically Black college or university in the state of Texas. And he had an agriculture background, and went on to teach. And he also ended up going to World War II. And this is where something important happened, because when he was a student at Prairie View, he worked on the landscaping and grounds and really enjoyed it. But when he was pulled into World War II in the 1940s, he realized and was able to see and was stationed in Tokyo, Japan. And here he saw the beautiful gardens and landscapes around the homes in Japan, in Tokyo, and that reignited his interest in landscaping. And here you see him hunched over his desk, drawing out one of his drawings. So he comes back to the United States, re-enrolls in Prairie View to get a master's, do more work in landscaping and horticulture, and then also goes to Ohio State as well to attend classes there because he is very interested in this new and up and coming career of landscape architecture. And so he comes back to Texas, sets up shop in Dallas, has his own small nursery, his own small landscaping business where he does designs for clients, he does installation, maintenance, he even fixes the equipment. So Harding Newsome is one of those unsung heroes of Black landscape architecture. And I believe that the world in this road trip is better for it. Now, when I was thinking about this earlier today, I realized there are 3 artists or people whose primary way of making money was art in this presentation today. So you've met William Charles Costello, the entomological artist. Now I want to introduce you, and some of you all may know Mrs. Clementine Hunter. Mrs. Clementine Hunter, born on the Melrose Plantation in Louisiana. Look how wonderfully Bob is navigating us through this country. We have already hit Ohio, Indiana, Montana, California, Texas, and I may have forgot one, but nevertheless, we're in Louisiana. So doing great with that gas mileage, Bob. I'm so proud. And we are smooth riding. So Mrs. Clementine Hunter, what's important about her is that she is what is called a memory artist. No, it's not that she was visually impaired. It's that she said she never painted anything that she was looking at. She turned to her memory. And she is the first Black person who really became famous by being a folk artist and a self-taught artist. And the way that she got into art is that there was a lady, Mrs. Kinsey, who came and stayed at the Melrose Plantation. A lot of artists and writers did. And this lady ended up leaving her paints behind and her paint brushes. And so Clementine Hunter decided she was going to give it a shot. And she did. And she ended up painting a window shade. And this is a woman who painted, she used her lap as her easel, y'all. She used her lap as her easel. And she would paint not just window shades, she would paint milk jugs, she would paint gourds, she would paint, one time she painted some cloth someone left behind. And someone noted that, hey, your picture's going to swing off in the wind. And she attached some buttons to the end of the painting, and the gentleman thought it was just buttons. She said, oh no, those are voodoo beads, because I'm going to make sure nobody messes with my artwork. Now, one of the things she's most famous for is her zinnia paintings, And this is a look at her zinnia painting here today. So I just wanted to include the people who have a love of horticulture in their work. This woman also painted baptism. She painted card games. She painted the scenes that she saw growing up on this plantation in Louisiana, and a very fascinating story if you ever choose to look in her work. And obviously her flower pictures are my favorite. Now we're going to we're heading back to the east, and now we've made it to Mississippi, the mighty state of Mississippi, M-I, cricket letter I, hump letter I, Mississippi, in the southeastern state. The gentleman I want to introduce you to is a gentleman named Britt Dickey. Now, this is a man who prayed to the Lord that he would be able to afford some land so he could take care of his family. And the Lord heard Britt Dickey's prayer, and he provided for him. But what he provided was probably the worst land that you could ever find. And so Britt Dickey said he had to turn to his county extension agent. This land was just in terrible shape. It was in Pike County, Mississippi. Macomb, Mississippi is in that county. And the extension agent advised him of how he could get his land to a point where it would be nice and fertile and he would be able to feed the family. And Britt Dickey said that the only thing he ever went to the store for was sugar and flour. So from this land, not only was he able to feed himself and his very large family, he started a tree farm. And this tree farm was so successful and so big, it was well over 100 acres. And in the 1950s and 60s, he would host the tree farm, the field days for the county extension agents, for the foresters, for the soil conservationists in the state of Mississippi. That's how big his land was, and that is how much he had turned it around. And he produced timber from pines on that land. Britt Dickey lived to be 100 years old. And here he has given us his secret. He lived to be 100 and maybe even a little bit past that by going outside every day to get to work. So this is Britt Dickey, a self-made man who lived to be a centenarian, all because of his work outside with trees. Now, the next person I want to introduce you to on our road trip is a woman named Margaret Murray Washington. Margaret Murray Washington. This is the third wife of Booker T. Washington, the at one point most famous Black man, if not famous person in America, certainly a controversial figure when it comes to Black history in the United States, when it comes to American history in the United States. And regardless of how you feel about Booker T. Washington and his complicated legacy, he did build the house that we know as Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama. So he certainly contributed that, and I, for one, certainly have to thank him for it. Now, Margaret Murray Washington and Booker T. Washington went on a trip to England. And this was a trip they took because the Booker T. Washington's wealthy friends realized, hey, you haven't taken a vacation, you've worked for 20 years, let's send you to England. And they did. They sent them on a trip. So they go overseas and they attend some conferences there. They meet up with some other people who are notable, such as Susan B. Anthony. They meet with Queen Victoria, who was the queen at the time in England. And at one of the conferences where the Washingtons were attending, a group spoke about the women at the Swanley College and their work in horticulture and garden design. And these were women who were beekeeping and doing floriculture and horticulture and outdoor work. And so the Washingtons decided that they wanted to bring that practice back to Tuskegee because at the time, this is the early 1900s, late 1800s, it's not a popular thing for women to be outdoors doing garden design work. So they bring it back to Tuskegee, launch their own floriculture classes, their own garden design work. And Tuskegee is a school where the students are employed to take this knowledge back into their community and teach it. And this is what you see here. Some of the women doing that work at Tuskegee, whose names we may never know, whose faces we may never see, but nevertheless, they did the work at Tuskegee. And I just wanted to share that story with you. So sometimes it's the unnamed people that we certainly have to give our credit to. Now, so earlier I mentioned that we were out in California where it is warm and sunny, and look at that, oranges. So where does that mean we have landed? We have landed in Florida, y'all, sunny Florida. And this gentleman is William Henry Maxwell. William Henry Maxwell was born in Lowndes County, Georgia, down there by Valdosta, Georgia. And he was born into slavery. And William Henry Maxwell ends up becoming a teacher. And he decides to leave teaching. He said that the only thing they asked him was, did he have a horse? Did he have a saddle? And did he know how to ride that horse to get to the school to teach? He said yes, yes, and yes. And that was him in the teaching game. But he saw that this citrus thing was becoming a thing in Florida. And he is one of the pioneers in the citrus business. This is a man that by 1936 was worth $250,000 because he had grapefruit groves. He had pineapples. He had oranges. This is a man who was very beloved by the people in the citrus industry down there. And he was also someone who fought for the small citrus grower. He saw the writing on the wall. He saw becoming these big corporations, and he knew that that was going to push the smaller people out. But nevertheless, William Henry Maxwell fought the good fight. So when you drink your orange juice in the morning, think of people like William Henry Maxwell, some of the pioneers in the orange and citrus business in the state of Georgia. So always, even though my background is ornamental horticulture, I want to show love to the farmers. Now, still staying in the state of Florida, we're going to head on over to Jacksonville. So we just left Titusville, Florida. And in Jacksonville, Florida, in the early 1900s, there was a woman named Blanche King Hurston, whose own father, Edward King, was a professional gardener for the Meggs sister in Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville is a place that used to, at one point, have the highest population of Black Americans. And one of the wealthiest populations of Black Americans. The reason I brought up Blanche King Hurston's father is because she's a legacy child of horticulture. Her own dad was in the gardening business, and it's no surprise that she went on to launch her own florist business, and also she went on to have her own flower farm in Jacksonville that her father, Edward King, managed. Now, I said Jacksonville, and I mentioned Blanche King Hurston, and so some of y'all, if your wheels are moving in your head, you probably realize, that sounds like Zora Neale Hurston. Well, yes, that is Zora Neale Hurston's sister-in-law. So a slight connection to New York with the Harlem Renaissance, because Blanche King married Zora Neale Hurston's older brother, John Hurston. And what is so fabulous about this story is that off and on during her childhood, after Zora Neale Hurston's mother had passed, she didn't get along with the stepmother. We've heard that story through Cinderella several times. Sometimes it just don't work with the relatives. And so she went to go live with Blanche King Hurston. Blanche King Hurston's business was so successful that she often brought in friends and family to help her work at her floral shop and on her flower farm. So yes, that means Zora Neale Hurston was there making sure that all these things were in order with Blanche King Hurston. And what we also know is that Blanche King Hurston was very well-to-do. She had her own chauffeur to drive her car for her. When she opened her florist business, she brought out Shield's famous orchestra. A big band came out, and hundreds of people came out to her store in Jacksonville when the shop opened. Still in the state of Florida, I want to introduce y'all to a legend. And when I say this man is a legend, I mean he's a true legend. This is William O. Perry, and he is in Miami, Florida. Now, William O. Perry is a gentleman who is of Bahamian American descent, and he starts his floral business in Miami. And what is happening in him is happening to a lot of Black people at the time. They are not able to get into FDD, the Floral Telegraphic Delivery Association. And so what that means is that FTD would not allow Black people in to sell flowers through the wire service. So William O. Perry decides he must come up with a plan, because it's not just him losing business, it's Black people all over the country who are not able to sell flowers by wire because of the rejection of the color of their skin. So what does William O. Perry do? He does what he has to do, y'all. He dresses up as a waiter, and he goes to the FTD convention and takes all the notes that he can take at this convention, because he is disguised as a server there. And what he does with that information is he comes back and forms his own florist association with his own ability to wire through his own community, which would be the Black florists that you see there. And that is what he does. And he launches it in 1952, and they meet for decades and decades and decades. And William O. Perry is in that picture with the group on the far left of the picture. John Wesley Lee, a famous Pittsburgh florist, is in the middle with the white name tag. They had conventions in Atlanta, in Pittsburgh, in Miami, in Cleveland. I believe they were in DC at one point. So this is a group that was very active, hidden in plain sight, doing the work, and incredibly supportive of each other. At their own meetings, they had flower shows, they had flower schools where they were teaching each other. Many of the people who worked under people like William O. Perry went on to go open their own shops. So they were all in and very intent on spreading the wealth and spreading the knowledge in that group. So when we talk about when you have to spy and do espionage for a good cause, this is the type of person we think about, William O. Perry. Now we are going to head up to South Carolina to meet someone who I feel is just the queen of horticulture to me. This is Mrs. Annie Mae Van Reed, of originally from North Carolina, but she made her claim to fame in Darlington, South Carolina. Also a person who started off as a teacher, but grew beautiful flowers in her own yard. She came from a farming family, so she had very good knowledge of horticulture, and people would always offer to buy her flowers. She was just giving them away, but so many people wanted to buy them. She said, you know what? I will open up my own shop. We're in the middle of Darlington. There's no other shop here. So why not? And that is what she does. And she launches the Darlington Greenhouse and her florist shop. This is a woman who sells plants from South Carolina all the way up to Boston. She sells millions of plants, seeds. She sells vegetables. She also has a truck garden. She has multiple greenhouses. And she also is very savvy with not just media, she's also savvy with real estate. So she was essentially a very wealthy woman in her time. As you can see, there's a picture of her floral delivery van, and it was what she used to get around town and spread out the plants for her 5-acre nursery and greenhouse. So Mrs. Annie Mae Van Reed, and this is really the sign from her florist shop. And also, I tell people this all the time. So if you've heard me say this before, you know what I'm going to say. I just love, and I'm not advocating for fur coats, but I just love how she's in Darlington with this big old fur coat on. Like you really need a fur coat in Darlington, because you don't need a fur coat in South Carolina at all, for those that don't know. But that's just a flex. She just wants everybody to know how wealthy she is. At least that's what I take from that picture. So, I mean, just to be so fabulous. This is why I think she's an icon, Mrs. Annie Mae Van Reed. Now, we're going to head up to North Carolina, the home state of Mrs. Annie Mae Van Reed. And this gentleman that you see is Willie Calloway. And the quote that you see on the right is not one from Willie Calloway himself. It is a quote from Elizabeth Lawrence, who is a grande dame herself of Southern gardening. When they talk about the greats of Southern gardening, J.C. Ralston is brought up, Thomas Jefferson is brought up, William Leonard Hunt, Bill Hunt is brought up, and so is Elizabeth Lawrence. But this was her right-hand man, literally, Willie Calloway. And I wanted to share this picture that was sent to me by a gentleman named Alan Bush from Garden Rant, because I think it's so important to acknowledge the people who are behind the scenes doing the work. Elizabeth Lawrence wrote a lot of beautiful books, a lot of beautiful articles, and certainly put in a beautiful garden, Winghaven in North Carolina. However, you can never do it alone. And for you to be able to have all that kind of time to write, who do you think's out there working? And it would be the people like the Willie Calloways of the world. So just look at him, just extraordinary in that garden. And I got to tell you, I've been an estate gardener too, and you make a lot of decisions when you're working on that crew. So we certainly want to acknowledge the level of horticultural astuteness that Willie Calloway must have had to be so close to Elizabeth Lawrence and to work with her, and the things that he must have taught her as well. So Willie Calloway, thank you for taking us through the great state of North Carolina so we can meet him tonight, Bob. And he, to me, is someone who is important to Black garden history. And honestly, I say Black garden history. Guess what, y'all? It's American history. It is world history. If you're a plant lover, this is all of our history. So take note of these people, because they are people that we all should know and come to love. Now, we're going to stay in North Carolina, and we're going to head up to Asheville and meet the Azalea King. This is Sylvester Owens. And he, after Chauncey Beadle passed away, the great horticulturist from Canada, his at one time chauffeur, and then who ended up being his right-hand man at Biltmore Estate, this is Sylvester Owens. And this gentleman, when he was appointed to the job to take over Biltmore as the head gardener there and to run the horticultural work at the estate, what was said about him, that's just my alarm. Let me know I got 50. I'm just going to try to stay on, make sure I don't go over myself. So this is what was said about him, that he knows more about plants and their origins than anyone around. And he was called the Azalea King. Now, this is a man that taught classes in North Carolina, and he taught them for garden clubs. This is a man who, when he passed away, flowers were shipped in from all over the world to show a sign of respect for his knowledge. He was part of the plant hunters group with Chauncey Beadle. What I love about horticulture in this history is that it gives us a chance to talk about and address things that we wouldn't normally talk about in gardening, such as colorism. And if you notice, this is a very, very fair-skinned Black man. And even there were times that when he would go to hotels and they thought he was a white man, he'd say, no, I'm a Black man. And they would send him, of course, during the Jim Crow era, to the Black room. So his ability to be able to even move in these spaces and be a plant hunter during those days, because he was also driving the car. So he's also someone hidden in plain sight with Chauncey Beadle, with the other plant hunters in North Carolina, and did a fabulous job. And I've been to Biltmore. I don't know how many of you all have, but it's a beautiful place. But Sylvester Owens is somebody that you need to think about the next time you go there. Now we're going to head up to Virginia. Now, Virginia becomes super important, especially this year. And I want to introduce y'all to a gentleman named Asa Sims, also a North Carolina native. Asa Sims ends up going to Hampton University. He wants to be an artist, but during his work study, he is assigned to the greenhouse. And so he works in the greenhouse and loves it and realizes I can paint pictures with flowers. I don't have to do it with paint. And so he has this lifelong love affair with horticulture. He goes on to be one of the co-founders of what was called back then the Negro Garden Club of Virginia, the very famous garden club who will be celebrating their 90th anniversary on April 22nd of this year. So Asa Sims also goes on to be the state advisor of these clubs. He teaches beautification work, not just in Virginia, but throughout the state of North Carolina, and works extensively with the garden clubs to create programs, curate programs, and also is a professor at the school. He has his own nursery, he has his own greenhouse, and he also hosts programs at his house for the garden clubs throughout their reign in Virginia. I mentioned that he was one of the co-founders of the Negro Garden Club of Virginia. And this lady in the middle, when there were 4 people at the table that day, April 22nd, 1932 in Hampton, Virginia, Ethel Early Clark, who you see highlighted in the middle, was the only woman at the table that day. And she is one of the other co-founders. The other 2 were William Cooper and Purvis J. Chesson. Now, Ethel Early Clark was also the first president of the Negro Garden Club of Virginia, and they had 3 real major goals that they wanted to achieve with their work, their beautification work. And it was to stimulate interest, disseminate information, and of course, encourage beautification. Now, these are women that had their own flower shows, that did their own plantings, that did beautification work at post offices and schools, and also churches. And they were very active in civil rights. They registered people to vote. They were organized. So when we think about organized groups back then, you think the NAACP, the National Negro Business League, the UNIA of Marcus Garvey, the Black Church, and also these Black garden clubs. I don't think that they're credited enough for their level of organization skills. So the Black garden clubs also, when they had their 10th anniversary in the 1940s, by then, a gentleman named H. Hamilton Williams had joined the faculty of Hampton University. He was a graduate of Hampton. He went to teach at North Carolina A&T and also graduated from Cornell with his PhD. He was the first person, the first academic to ride around the South and study and write about Black rural gardens, what I call folk gardens, what I think in the landscape architectural field are called Black vernacular landscapes. But folk gardens is way shorter to say, y'all, and I think way cooler, but I digress. H. Hamilton Williams is a gentleman who creates and puts together the handbook of the Negro Garden Club of Virginia. He edits this book, and it comes out right about a year after their 10th anniversary of these women's clubs. Now, what's important about this book? It is a book where Henry Skinner from Morris Arboretum, the curator, then contributes. People from Better Homes and Gardens contribute. Jackson and Perkins Roses. People from all types of organizations contribute. And Eleanor Roosevelt, who was the first lady of the United States at the time, writes a letter that goes in the front of this book. It's like the opening, the forward, if you will. So what do we know about that? Well, we know that her husband was president. This is the 1940s. An election's coming up in 1944. Mary McLeod Bethune, another figure in Black history, has a wonderful relationship with Eleanor Roosevelt. Though I haven't been able to see how she got in that book, I would put all that together and say it probably came out of those relationships. And Black women organizing, getting people registered to vote. Of course, Eleanor Roosevelt wants to get their attention. Of course she does. She wants to get her husband reelected too. And Eleanor Roosevelt obviously is one of the most beloved first ladies in the United States history, but very interesting that she writes a letter to this garden club book. But I do want to say I'm on it, y'all. I called down to Bethune-Cookman, where Mary McLeod Bethune's archives are, and they're trying to help me figure out if there was some correspondence going on to explain why this letter is in the book. So stay tuned. So we want to go up to Maryland, and I want to give y'all this very inspirational story, especially those of us that are becoming of an advanced age. This is Mr. Thomas Queen, and he is 80. He's 86 in this picture. It is taken in 1920, and it is inside of his greenhouse in Maryland. This is a man who was born into slavery. He worked at the State House as a gardener, and one day somebody threw a geranium in an ash can, and he nursed it back to health. And he said, I kind of like this plant thing here, and started his own greenhouse and shipped plants throughout the state of Maryland. And this is a picture of him. If you look at the sides and the rows, you can see he's in his greenhouse and did quite well. Look at this ad in the paper. Ads aren't free, y'all. And he ran these for quite some time and quite a few many years. So it's never too late to start your nursery, to start your greenhouse, no matter how small. Thomas Queen, you have inspired us to go for it, even when we're octogenarians, especially when we're octogenarians. Now, I want to move on to someone who is one of my favorite people of all time, and I deeply mean that. She inspires me as a writer. This is Mrs. Effie Lee Newsom, born Mary Effie Lee. When she gets married, she drops the Mary as her first name and just goes by the name Effie Lee Newsom. She is a writer and poet of the Harlem Renaissance. She works for W.B. Du Bois. She writes for The Crisis magazine, amongst many other Black magazines and publications during that time. And this is one of her most famous poems that was featured in The Crisis magazine under the tenure of Du Bois. Now, in this poem, what I want y'all to know is that Effie Lee Newsom is a nature writer. She's an eco-poet. She is probably one of the first people, if not the first, that pretty much dedicates and writes all of her poetry for children. She also ends up being a children's librarian. She uses nature in the Jim Crow era to remind these Black children who are seeing a lot, hearing a lot, going through a lot, how beautiful they are. And she compares their beautiful brown skin and says, the only thing more beautiful than you is nature. And here this famous poem, if some of y'all have had a chance to read it, she compares their brown skin to the land, the trunks of trees, and she tells the children at the end, thank God you are brown, because brown has mighty things to do. So just a way with words and nature to uplift and inspire children, and knowing that not just Black children will read these poems, that honestly, all children will read them and be inspired by them. So she does put together a book. Eventually, it is called Gladiola Garden, and it is a collection of her poetry. It was re-released last year. And I want to point out that not only did Effie Lee Newsom write this book with this several hundred poems are in this book. It's a beautiful book. A Black woman, Lois Mailou Jones, was the illustrator. Now, Lois Mailou Jones is from Boston. Her grandmother was one of the honestly first Black people who was at Martha's Vineyard. They had a home there. She would visit there in the summer. Lois Mailou Jones studied art, not just in Boston. She studied it in Paris. She went to Haiti. She launched the art department at Howard University in Washington, D.C., the HBCU as well. So, and I also want to point out from this book, not just Lois Mailou Jones being the illustrator for Effie Lee Newsom, that the Associated Publishers who published the book, that is the publishing house of Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history himself. So just wanted y'all to know, look at this big link between Black history and the garden world in nature. Now, we have finally made it to New York. We are back in New York. Bob is taking us from LaGuardia, Ireland, California, Texas, Florida, Virginia, Pennsylvania, all over America, and got us back to New York this evening. What way to do it, Bob Highland. We just love you. Thank you. So I wasn't going to leave New York out of this conversation. Not at all. Not at all. I will not fail you. Now, one of the people I want to tell y'all about our first stop as we head home is uptown, baby, to Harlem. This is Lucille Kane. Now, she's from Sparta, Georgia, and goes to New York, marries into the floral business. Her first husband passes away, but she really has a talent for it, and she keeps going with the floral culture work, has her own shop. So I told you she's from Sparta, Georgia, down here where I am. She moves to New York. So that gives us a story of the great migration of Black people from the South to the North that went on for about 60, 70 years. So very, very wonderful detail there. Now, This picture is taken at the Metropolitan Florist Association meeting, where she is the only Black florist in the room, but she wins this prize for most originality. You see 300 baby orchids in her hat and 15 Hawaiian orchids at the top. This is also a woman who did work to speak up for the Pullman porters, part of the union with A. Philip Randolph, his work. So I'm bringing all of this up with the migration, with the unions, with her creativity, because when we look at Black garden history, look at all the wonderful things we're able to talk about as it relates to civil rights and that history in America. So the stunning Lucille Kane of Lucille's Florist in Harlem, New York. Also in Harlem, it is the 1920s and it is popping in the streets of Harlem. And I know 14th Street in Harlem, so don't write me a nasty letter to Brooklyn Botanical Garden because I got the street launch. It's just fun, y'all. It's just fun up there. So the Lafayette Theater, 1920s. This is where Black people, Black performers who have, these country boys who have come up from the South and want to make it big in New York, they stand outside of Lafayette Theater. There are performances and people gather under this wonderful tree, the Tree of Hope, because you stand there hoping you're going to get picked for the next big event. And people do get picked because there's a lot of talent under this tree. Now, one day, the Parks Department comes along and cuts the tree down. And this is a direct quote. "'Twas a murder, Jack. It was a murder." And people were so upset. There is a funeral in the streets for this tree. The trombone is playing. The trumpet is playing. I'm not even making this up. This is a big, big deal. It is very, very sad. And what's also happening is that the Great Depression is starting. The Lafayette Theater is about to shut down. But it's the Tree of Hope. There's always hope. And this gentleman here, Ralph Cooper, also known as Dark Gable instead of Clark Gable because he's a Black man. I think that's kind of funny that they would call him that. But anyway, and I'm from Georgia, Gone with the Wind, so that reference. He says, you know what? I'm going to keep a trunk. I'm going to keep a part of this tree and I'm going to take it to the new theater where I'm performing and my people are performing and my friends are performing. And I'm going to have the stage hand to mount it stage left. So anytime a performer comes, they're going to have to touch this tree and it's going to give them luck. And that is the tree that you see at the famous Apollo Theater. It is mounted on that stump. That is part of the Tree of Hope. That is part of Harlem history, Harlem Renaissance history, American history. It is iconic. Everyone has touched that tree. James Brown, Gladys Knight, Beyonce, anybody who is somebody and performed on that stage, whether they were booed or cheered, has had to touch the Tree of Hope. So what a fabulous story for Black horticultural history in Harlem. Now we have made it to the Boogie Down Bronx. I remember the first comment on this chat, somebody said, shout out or something like that from the Bronx. So here we are. Now this is Joel Elias Spinger. And yes, I'm referring to your neighbor, the New York Botanic Garden. Joel Elias Spingern, Spingern, S-P-I-N-G-A-R-N, is a Jewish man. And he is also part of the NAACP, one of the founders, a confidant of W.B. Du Bois, who we mentioned earlier in the Crisis magazine, which was the official magazine of the NAACP that Effie Lee Newsom wrote for. Now, Joel Elias Spinger is on the board at the New York Botanic Garden. He is also a clematis enthusiast, and he is an educator. This is a gentleman who speaks up on civil rights. He is choosing to take this stance, choosing to be on this the right side of history when a lot of people aren't. But I just wanted to show how these important people are in our world and they do this civil activism and they do it because it is the right thing to do. So he has a wonderful we could do a whole lecture on his clematis work alone, but I wanted to point out Joel Elias Spinger and his work, or not working at the New York Botanic Garden, but being on their board. And what else about that New York Botanic Garden? Now, this gentleman did not work there, but he was a member of the New York Botanic Garden, and some of y'all recognize him. This is David Augustus Williston, the man credited as the first Black landscape architect. He is a graduate of Cornell. He was a student of Liberty Howard Bailey. He was hired by Booker T. Washington down at Tuskegee. You know, Booker T. Washington got some of that robber baron money from the North, from the Rockefellers, people like that, was able to build Tuskegee. And Booker T. Washington was able to pay people like David Augustus Williston to come down there and teach students, not just horticulture, landscape architecture, grounds maintenance, etc. So David August Williston ends up living in Washington, D.C. as well. But I just thought it was so interesting that in his obituary, the final article ever written about you, it states that he was a member of the New York Botanic Garden. And for me, as an entrepreneur and the other entrepreneurs on the call, everybody who needs their money on the call will get this. Please send my check immediately. That was in one of his letters, and I just adore his forward thinking and speaking in his business communication. This man isn't ponyfooting around. I'm a landscape architect. I'm brilliant. I got nurseries to pay. I got, them dump truck people to pay. Please send my check immediately. A direct quote from David Augustus Williston, the first Black landscape architect, who did work not just at Tuskegee, Fisk, like I mentioned, NDC, Florida A&M University, just an extensive bio this gentleman has. And I want to thank the New York Botanic Garden, the archivist, I hope I'm saying his name right, Mr. Sinan, for sending this picture to me. This is a picture of Frank J. McInnes. Now, yes, this gentleman on the left is a white man, and he was working at New York Botanic Garden when apparently he got a call from the gentleman on the right, William Stewart Nelson, who is the first Black president of Dillard University, the HBCU in New Orleans, Louisiana. And they are going to launch a floriculture program. And who do they tap to launch that program? Frank J. McInnes, the Brit who was working at the New York Botanic Garden. And Dillard follows the playbook of the New York Botanic Garden to launch their floriculture program back in the late 1930s under the leadership, the presidency of William Stewart Nelson. William Stewart Nelson is not just a civil rights activist only. He's part of the nonviolent movement. He is a graduate of Howard. He is in heavy correspondence with the hometown hero of Atlanta, certainly, Martin Luther King Jr. So this legacy of NYBG and all this civil rights momentum in Black history, I love it. I mean, we have to explore this. This is really, really exciting things, y'all. Now, finally, we have made it back to Brooklyn. Thank you, Bob. I have been waiting all night. So if there are any hip hop heads on this call, is Brooklyn in the house? Without a doubt. That is what you hear the Notorious B.I.G. say in his famous rap song, is Brooklyn in the house without a doubt. Now, no, I'm not saying he went to the Brooklyn Botanic Garden in his lifetime. I certainly hope he did. Who knows? We need to check the visitor log, I guess. But why am I bringing up the Brooklyn Botanic Garden? Well, I know one person in this room knows, and that is Bob, because I've given him a hot tip. So I talked about the Handbook of the Negro Garden Club of Virginia, and I talked about all the great people who were in there, like Better Homes and Garden, and what did I say? Morris Arboretum, Perkins, Jackson and Perkins Roses. Now, what also was in that book was an ad. There were 2 pages of ad in the back of the book. And if you look at what I circled, well, it looks like to me, and I'm going to blow it up for y'all so you can see, that the Brooklyn Botanic Garden ran an ad in the Handbook of the Negro Garden Club of Virginia. This is 1942, 1943. So who up there in Brooklyn at the Botanic Garden said, you know what? Yeah, let's drop our ad in this handbook, this one-of-a-kind handbook for Black women in 1941, 1942. This is outstanding. This is historic. This is what we call a question that needs an answer. Please empty out your file cabinets. Let me know, because I would love to solve this mystery. And so we know that there were only so many ads in this book, and the Brooklyn Botanic Garden is directly saying, these are the books that we sell. This is the address. And this is what those books look like. I have 2 of them myself, if you want to see here. And I got them because I really wanted to connect with these women and see what they were reading in the 1940s. I have the Rose Garden and the Rock Garden book from that series. So Brooklyn Botanic Garden, please let me know. I am so proud that y'all are part of Black garden history, and really part of the most iconic part of Black garden history with the Black Women Garden Clubs. So with that being said, I want to thank all y'all. I want to thank you, Bob. I want to thank you, Charles. I want to thank you, audience, for being here with me tonight on this crazy road trip that we went on. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I've enjoyed being here. And if you know a story I should tell that I should share, please let me know. I do other road trips. I try to change the people up. Some of them are my favorites. You'll see them. But if you ever catch me on another road trip, you'll probably catch another fun group of people. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And that's all I have.
Abra, that was excellent. And I think it's unanimous. Everyone wants to go on another road trip with you. So I hope
Let's
you
do
have
it.
part two planned soon. We do have some questions and lots of great comments, which will be saved that you could go through at another time.
Okay.
But one of the first questions was, it was from Roberta, who, Roberta Di Biceglie. Yes, she asked, here it is. Well, she wanted to know, where do you get the information from? How did you do this research, or what are the sources for your research?
Sure. So it took time, Roberta. So first of all, I started this around 2010, but people, so the elders, these folks, when you go to these garden club meetings, especially in the South, they love to gossip down here. And they say, when I was in South Carolina, there was this lady who had this nursery, and that's how you start learning these things. And that's how you learn about people like Annie Mae Van Reed. Also, the HBCUs, the historically Black colleges and universities, I feel are great resources for finding this type of information. Certainly not Google. I mean, let me just tell you this. That's the last place I go. I go to Google after I've gotten the initial research out the way. So that is quite helpful. There are historic Black garden clubs that still exist. I would say media, the researching like old historical media. And I think those are, so word of mouth, HBCUs, and historic media, are I think my go-to sources, Roberta. I hope that helped you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, because so many of those people are completely unsung and unknown, and clearly you have to dig really deep to get these rich stories to us. And thank you for doing it.
You're welcome. And so, Roberta, I want to tell you this too, because I just realized it is Black history book. So I was reading a book on the Harlem Renaissance. Now, the book was on the Harlem Renaissance. Of course, they're talking about County Cullen and Elaine Locke and all those folks, Langston Hughes. But here's the thing, they started talking about Langston Hughes drove a floral delivery van, and Langston Hughes worked at a farm in Staten Island for this Greek farmer. And I was like, what? So you gotta read just Black books, because they'll throw this in there like it's nothing, but to us, it's a really big deal. I can't imagine like Langston Hughes out there pulling corn and tomatoes, but hey, he was before he was this great poet. So that's another good resource too.
Thank you.
Good.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mary Meyer is asking, could we have a list of the names or list of people that you referenced? She didn't catch all of the names as you were showing.
Mary Meyer, you can have that list if you promise to buy my book when I finish writing it. And yes, I'm a little behind, but that's the only way I'm gonna give up that list. If I can get, how many people on this chat? 203 copies of Conquer the Soil purchased. So that's the agreement.
A follow-up to that question is from Dawn, who is asking, when is your book due to be released? Who is the publisher?
It is due to be released in winter 2023, and the publisher is Timber Press.
Okay. Very good. Let's see. There's lots of questions. Let's see.
The book is titled Conquer the Soil. So, and I mentioned, somebody asked that. That's why I just said that in the, that's the name of it. If you type in Conquer the Soil on the internet, you'll see it.
A question from Leanne Lavin. Will you produce a curriculum for teaching institutions?
Well, guess what? I will be teaching my third class starting this Thursday at Auburn University, my alma mater. I teach a class on Black Garden. I call it Black Garden History, but the class is called Working with the Hands. I got that title from the second autobiography of Booker T. Washington, where he talks about all the people that work with their hands, such as gardeners, engineers, farmers, etc. So I do have a curriculum that I teach to the grad landscape students down at Auburn. And so the answer is yes, and I guess I need to maybe make it more palatable for younger students, but there is a curriculum where I do teach this, and I get into detail. I don't just fly through it like a road trip. We talk about way deeper things.
Okay, anyone else have a question they'd like to ask themselves? Ask it yourself. No, no. Well, I want to thank you again, Abra. It was excellent talk, enlightening. The comments were just incredible. Everyone loved your talk. Just fascinating, eye-opening, enlightening. So let's give a big round of applause for Abra. Look at those hands clap.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, everyone. We are continuing tomorrow morning. Doors will open at 8 o'clock, and we'll start at 9 with Wamboy Ippolito talking about or speaking. So have a good night, everyone. And thank you
Thanks,
again,
Charles. You
Abra.
too.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks,
Bob, and
everyone.
everyone. Sandra.
Good night. Good to see you all.
you.